Warriors of Alathra. My name is Sherman, the original author of the AlathraWar plugin and a former player who has participated in wars, both wins and losses. I have also had the opportunity to spectate a few wars on Alathra New Frontiers. In this video, I will not be going over specifics on how the war system works, but I will be providing a brief overview of war strategies and tactics. While not all players are interested in war, combat, or PvP, understanding war strategy may be very useful when war inevitably breaks out. It is important to make preparations for war and combat even if you have no intentions of fighting. You never know when war will break out, and good preparation can often be a lifesaver. Preparation can be broken down into three categories: political, economic, and infrastructure. Political preparation is arguably the most important out of the three, and essentially boils down to alliances and agreements. Reaching out to other groups of players, including towns, nations, and in-game organizations, is an important part of building alliances, treaties, and other agreements. It is important to consider your position and the positions of others in the geopolitical sphere of Alathra, and this will shape the nature of the agreements. Agreements should be clear and specific, and getting them in writing is always best practice. While there are many different types of agreements, some examples include alliances, defense pacts, non-aggression pacts, which is an agreement to not fight one another, trade or supply agreements, and many others. Sometimes these agreements are made public, but oftentimes they are kept secret. Whether or not to make an agreement public is entirely dependent on the geopolitical situation. Economic preparation is the most obvious form of preparation, but also one that is often overlooked, or attempted when it is already too late. No war can be fought without supplies. In fact, many wars are determined when a side runs out of supplies to continue the fighting. It is essential to stockpile weapons, armor, food, golden apples, potions, gunpowder, and all other war supplies. Most of the time, neutral parties already have these supplies and are willing to sell them, for the right price of course. You should secure these trade deals before your enemies do. Infrastructure preparation refers to the building of structures that can play a role in war and combat. These structures should slow down your enemies and protect your allies. Most of these structures are made for defensive purposes and include things like walls, gates, doors, towers, cannons, etc. But it's also important to consider building these structures for offensive purposes. Building outposts in and around enemy territory can provide a great vantage point while reducing the risk of an ambush. If you are near a body of water, you should also consider building a fleet of ships. A fleet will often allow you greater maneuverability, especially if your enemy does not have a fleet themselves or choose not to engage. Ships are also a great way to transport a large amount of supplies over water. Good communication and organization is the most powerful thing an army can wield on Alathra. Here are some of my tips. Establish leaders who will be responsible for making and executing war plans for the entire fighting force. Avoid a free-for-all mentality. Make sure that everyone is willingly participating in this structure, even if it is temporary. It is essential to avoid being one-dimensional with your forces. The leaders should plan ahead prior to engagements with the enemy. With that said, the situation can change quickly, and you should not be afraid to abandon your plan and change tactics when necessary. Spies are everywhere. The more people you tell about your plans, the higher the chance is that your enemy will find out about them and counter them. Be careful on who you share information with and when. Having 10 or more people in a Discord call often creates confusion, chaos, and disorganization, and your enemies will happily take advantage of it. There's no magic number, but I suggest around 5 people in a call is good. Try not to venture too far away from your forces and avoid engaging in rogue attacks into non-advantageous positions. If an enemy is fleeing away, it is not always best to pursue. It could always be a trap or a distraction. Wars will provide many different opportunities to attack the enemy, and it's important to have patience and not get too greedy. always think of the bigger picture. Knowing your enemy will often put you in the best position to succeed. Put yourself in their shoes, and try to understand their position. You should ask yourself the following questions. Who are their allies and who are they associated with? Who and where are they most likely to attack? What are their motivations and goals? What strategies are they most likely to use and how can you counter them? Plan your strategies to best account for what you think your enemy will do. It is important to keep your enemy on their toes, constantly guessing what your next move is. Do not give them the opportunity to get comfortable. Embrace unconventional strategies. There are many ways to do this, and most of them are situational. An example would be making it appear as if you are going to attack somewhere, and then at the last minute splitting your forces and attacking somewhere else. This can lead to your enemy scrambling to defend both places, breaking their organization. The best defense is a good offense. Here are my tips for successful offensive operations. Look for weaknesses in your enemy, either in their army or their defenses. Concentrate your attacks around these weaknesses. Avoid taking on your enemy's strengths without effective countermeasures. It is important to be opportunistic when attacking the enemy. As the attacker, you will often have the advantage of picking your battles. Don't be afraid to retreat if it is clear that the advantage is not in your favor. There will most likely be other opportunities to attack the enemy. You should be utilizing Alathra's custom war mechanics such as cannons, siege towers, and lockpicks in order to breach the enemy's defenses. Underutilization of these mechanics can cripple your attacks and give the advantage to the enemy. The defenders often have the advantage of being able to resupply themselves mid-battle. It's important to recognize this and bring adequate supplies when attacking. A forward outpost is a great way to store supplies near the front lines. Lots of times defense is forced. Even so, there are opportunities to attack the enemy. You should utilize whatever defenses you have, such as walls and towers. Attacking the enemy from the safety of these defenses is a great way to slow them down with relatively low risk. There is also a good chance that the enemy will not be familiar with the layout of your defenses. If that's the case, you can often lure the enemy away from the weaknesses in your defenses and towards the most advantageous positions. If part of the enemy force is separated from the rest, it may present a great opportunity for a counterattack. Counterattacks should be fast and concentrated. When counterattacking, it's important to not stay too far away from your defenses, so you can always retreat as needed. If the enemy runs away, it's probably not worth pursuing. While traps are not allowed in or around the capture point during a siege, this does not mean that you can't have traps prepared elsewhere. Setting traps for your enemy is a great way to split their forces and gain the advantage. If your enemy is overcommitting and likes to chase you, they will be susceptible to traps. Not all traps need to be complex. In fact, some of the simplest ones can often be the most effective. Cannons are powerful tools that can be used both offensively and defensively. A direct hit from a grape shot volley can have devastating results. Since they are also fairly cheap to build and fire, incorporating them into your defenses is a worthwhile investment. And that's pretty much it. Wars can be some of the most fun that you can have on Alathra, but it is important to remember at the end of the day that it is just a game. Hostilities should be kept in-game and in roleplay, and not directed at other players. Reaching out to the opposing side to establish norms and plan battles will always make wars more enjoyable and reduce toxicity. Good luck and Godspeed.